Greetings to all in the love and light of the One Infinite Creator. My name is Jonathan Tong, and I'm facilitator for the Seattle Law of One study group. We can be found on the list of study groups on the L&L Research website shown on your screen. We can also be found on Facebook if you search for Seattle Law of One. We do meet on Zoom twice a week on the times that are shown on your screen. We do also have an email address also shown on your screen. Feel free to contact us through that email if you would like to join any of our Zoom sessions or join any of the Q&A sessions in the future, like the one you are watching now. We do also have a YouTube channel where we keep recordings of previous Q&As with Austin, Trish, Gary, and Jim McCarty, all from the L&L Research Channeling team. If you click on any one of those recordings, you'll see a list of topics and timestamps below, and I encourage you to browse through there and see if there's anything of interest to you in your spiritual journey at this time. Otherwise, we are blessed once again to be joined by Trish and Gary and Austin for some informal conversation and question and answers about the Law of One. Welcome to you all. How are you guys doing today?
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really always so great to join you. I'm doing well today. We're warming up here in Kentucky. It feels really nice. Sun's out shining. It's bright and beautiful. So it's been a good day.
Unlike Seattle, I think spring is going to be a while coming to the Pacific Northwest. Gary and Trish, how are you guys doing today?
Good. We just said goodbye to a few out-of-state visitors, Law of One friends as well, and we had a great public meditation this Saturday, a channeling with Quo. Good dinner afterward, and doing well. How about you?
Yeah. Can't really add much to it.
Nice. Yeah, I think Jim mentioned it in his Camelot journal. He said it was really an exceptionally beautiful session. Don't remember the details why, but he just, yeah, it sounded like really good. May I ask, is it usually more or less the same group of people that attend those sessions, or is it different mix every time?
How about you, Trish?
I think probably like 60 to 70% of the people who attend pretty frequently. And then there's like another 20 that cycle in and out, and then we always have a few new faces. So, yeah.
It's wonderful.
And as you've been there, it's a small living room, so smallish. So like, 14 people is our max for the circle.
16 is what we found out this week.
Well, yeah, that was with overflow, but
Accidentally overbooked.
Indeed. Well, I appreciate your doing that. That is, again, another huge gift of service to others and, yeah, inestimable valuable. Trish, I did want to ask you about upcoming L&L events because I know we have one coming up in Seattle in the near future as well as others. For folks who aren't up on all this, would you mind sharing a little bit about the calendar for upcoming L&L events?
Sure. So the first event that we have is our homecoming event in Louisville, Kentucky. And that is the last weekend of May, I believe, Labor Day weekend, right? Memorial Day.
Memorial Day.
Labor Day
weekend.
is
the second one.
And that event filled up in about an hour. So, and then got a wait list within a couple hours of that. So that event is full, but that one is held in Louisville, Kentucky every year, and it's not so much a retreat style event, unlike our coming home event, which a few of the people on this Zoom have been to. This year is exceptional in that we are trying something new. We are going to have two of these events, one on the East Coast in Philadelphia, and that is in August, and then one on the West Coast rather in Washington, and that is at the end of June. And those are retreat style, so on-site lodging and meals, so everyone's kind of commingling. And then we have a European Prague Law of One Seeker Gathering, and that will be in later September, but we haven't launched that yet. So wow. I think that covered it.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested, there's still seats open for the East and West Coast events, Philly and Seattle. It's Trish mentioned on-site lodging. It's a more intimate, immersive and intensive experience because there's an extra day involved too. So it starts Thursday evening, concludes Sunday evening, and it's our favorite, but we love them all.
Yeah, and having been to one homecoming in Louisville and the last coming home event in Seattle, I cannot recommend them highly enough. It's such a beautiful opportunity to meet kindred spirits and seekers and to learn from each other and teach each other as we continue in our spiritual growth. So the best way for folks to register events would be through the L&L Research website?
Yeah, if you go to our website, I believe under the news tab, there'll be a news article that states just a brief overview about the coming home event. And then there will be a link on that page to register from there.
Sounds good. Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm registered for the Seattle event for sure, as are many folks I know in our Seattle group. And thank you, Trish, so much, and Gary and Austin for all the hard work that you do put into organizing these events and finding a place that's suitable and convenient, reasonably convenient for everybody. No small task. If I remember right, last year you looked at 30 different possible locations, at least on West. Wow.
Yeah, and about the same this year.
I believe it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing that, and looking forward to seeing you all in Seattle in the not too distant future. I did want to ask some more questions, and I did want to encourage folks who are on the Zoom call, if you have any questions that you would like to ask Austin, Trish, or Gary, feel free to go ahead and type them into the chat window, and we will go in order. I do see some questions in there already. Before we get to that, though, I did have a question specifically for Austin. As I recall, at our last Q&A in December, you mentioned that you were born in Alamogordo, New Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when I looked at it on a map, it looks like it is about a 2-hour drive from Roswell.
That's
Have you
yes.
ever been to Roswell? Do you have any connection with the interesting history of Roswell on a personal level?
Interestingly, no, I have not been to Roswell. But you know, there's all sorts of UFO lore that I didn't even know about, even in the area of Alamogordo. Don investigated a UFO sighting in Alamogordo. It's really close to White Sands Missile Range, which where they test some missiles, and is a famous UFO case that happened in near White Sands Missile Range, where apparently it's even on, like, the Air Force has video of a UFO that landed in Holloman Air Force Base. And so there's lots of UFO activity in sort of that area of New Mexico, not just Roswell, but did not get to go to Roswell, no.
Indeed. I know that you personally have taken a very deep personal interest in the UFO phenomenon and have spent quite a bit of time studying it and thinking about it in terms of the, I guess, what could be described as the disclosure movement and the growing awareness of the phenomenon. Would you mind talking about that a little bit? Like, what does it mean to you? Why is it important to you? And how do you think that we as students of the Law of One can best relate to any such stories that might appear in the media?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It's been for the past about year now. My interest was reignited because the UFOs were a big part of my own sort of initial spiritual journey. It was a revelation about UFOs that broke down a lot of my social barriers that allowed me to then be open to the Law of One. But for most of my sort of spiritual seeking journey, after I found the Law of One, it was kind of like this, okay, I found the Law of One. That's what it was all about. I don't need to worry about UFOs anymore, which I think is generally true for a lot of people who go that route. I still maintained a bit of an interest. You know, I was always sort of watching the news, paying attention to the disclosure movement. And, you know, I was always interested in UFOs, but I wasn't intensely fascinated. But then last year, there's just some things happening in the government, in the world, and a lot of activity in the UFO and disclosure world that I think reignited my interest, and sort of I intuitively really caught back on. And that sort of sent me on a journey where I'm interested both in like modern UFO disclosure communities and how they approach the subject, but also the history of ufology. Even, before when Don got into ufology and studying UFOs, just sort of how it was approached by the initial people who really studied it and the experiences that people had throughout that whole time. Sort of just following an intuition that I really felt like there was something there for me to understand. At least I was just intensely curious. I was really, really fascinated in all of it after everything that happened last year. And I'm sort of coming into my thoughts are becoming more coherent about, like why I have this intense interest and how to look at like the modern ufology, UFO disclosure movement from a Law 1 perspective. I think one of the more interesting things, or the things that was really driving my curiosity, is that, I discovered the reality of the UFO phenomenon, and that led me straight to the Law of One, basically. Most people don't go that route. Most people, they discover the reality of the UFO phenomenon. They have a UFO experience. They have an abduction experience. A very, very small percentage of those people find material like the Law of One. A lot of them are sort of, I would say, they find another type of community. They remain sort of groping in the dark, not understanding what it is. They don't find a stable ground like the Law of One offered me. And so thinking about the recent activity, it's my opinion that it's relatively likely in the next few years we'll have some kind of institutional acknowledgement of the UFO phenomenon and the reality of it. And so I'm really wanting to understand how that's going to influence people, society, not just us as a community. I think it will be really interesting to see how things develop for the Law of One, the Law of One community. But outside of that, how will people react? And then how can we, as people who have the Law of One as a basis, be of service in a situation like that? Because it could likely be really chaotic. And we have this sort of package of information that gives a lot of coherence to the UFO narrative, but it's also impossible to share. I think, thinking about trying to, even people who believe fully in UFOs, giving them the Law of One, telling them that this information has everything you need to know, that's a very suspicious thing for them to receive, It's impossible to say, look at this, it has all the answers, because most people wouldn't pay attention to it. They're not going to believe it. And so how do we relate to such a societal shift like that? And how can we sort of consider the UFO phenomenon as Law of One seekers, but outside of a Law of One context, is really what I'm interested in.
That's fascinating. May I ask what is leading you to conclude that we will have some sort of big disclosure in the next few years? I wasn't seeing that myself.
That's just a personal opinion based on the dominoes that I see falling in what Ra would call the planetary game. And the disclosure, I think, would be, I'd qualify that I call it institutional acknowledgement of the reality of UFOs, um, not necessarily disclosure, because what is even disclosure? I think the first step would be the government, the military, academics, scientists acknowledging that there is at least something to investigate, something happening, and it's not prosaic, as they would call it. It's not human driven. There's a non-human intelligence interacting with us in some way that manifests as UFOs. So the dominoes that I see falling based on the whistleblowers that came forward last year and being tuned into the community that's connected to those whistleblowers, the politicians who are connected to those whistleblowers, the legislation that has come about as a result of those whistleblowers and the pathways that that legislation has taken. I see not a guarantee, but at least a bigger likelihood than I ever thought was possible that it could happen in the next few years, if not sooner.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know that question was asked in one of your channeling sessions not too long ago. I think it might have been the CC channeling session back in December or something like that. Gary, Trish, did you have any thoughts, opinions on the subject? I don't know if it's something that you think about as much as Austin or much at all.
No, not nearly as passionate as Austin. Of course, it's inherently fascinating. How could you not be fascinated by it? I think it represents the greatest possible paradigm shift for humanity. in terms of a single event or series of events outside of an asteroid heading for the planet. I think it would upend civilization in various ways, from religion to economy, to the way we relate, to our philosophy, to our mythological assumptions about who and what we are in the universe. But most of my information has come via Austin, who's poured an intense amount of time researching this. And so nothing further to add.
Trish, any thoughts, opinions on this subject?
Like Gary, I get my information from Austin. I could listen to Austin talk about this like all day. In fact, at the last CC channeling that we had here at our house, I was just like staring and listening to him talk about all these like advancements and all the news that were coming out. And that's my way of getting the information about this kind of stuff. Because naturally I'm not, I guess, interested, but hearing the passion from Austin is very interesting. Makes it interesting for me.
He's our information dealer.
Yeah.
Info deal. Yeah, I think there is something inherently fascinating about UFOs, and I think, as Ross said, at some point they discovered that mystery is really some of the best ways that they get people to be inspired to seek answers to bigger questions, and some of the UFO phenomenon may well be attributed to that, or crop circles, or anything else. It just seems fair to assume, as far as the research I've done and the studying I've done on it, which is a bit more than a little, but not a ton. Yes, there is a long history of contact between extraterrestrial entities and various world governments as well. And they've known it all along, and they're keeping it secret for as long as they can, until, I guess, disclosing it is to their benefit. And it seems any of the stories that I've seen always seem to be painting the picture of UFOs as more of a national security issue and something that is to be feared, rather than welcoming spiritually enlightened entities and such. Do you think, Austin, that would be... I know you have said something about the UFO phenomenon possibly being a catalyst for some spiritual awakening in the populace. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's related to basically what you just said, is at least in part related to it, and how we see it manifesting, particularly in discussions among our government, is, as you said, national security risks. There's always this idea of this weaponization of it. And I think that alone is an indication of the catalyst, the way that the UFO phenomenon manifests for us as a society, in a way that we're paying attention to, is it's harmful, it's material, it's nuts and bolts, they're craft, and we need to figure out how to deal with it on a security basis. Obviously, when the focus is on that, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that severs almost every other interesting aspect of the UFO phenomenon from the discussion. And I think that's not a coincidence. Like I said, it might be intentional or unintentional, but it is a representation of where we are as a culture dealing with something as otherworldly and interesting and innately spiritual as the UFO phenomenon. And so my sort of idea that I think could be the way that things unfold is if there is institutional acknowledgement, where there is sort of widespread, not necessarily everybody's going to believe it, but at least the institutions that we rely on to sort of cohere our reality say that this is a real thing. The weird aspects of UFOs that don't align with the material view of the world are impossible to ignore. Almost everybody who at least gets into UFO study, they might not go down the spiritual path, but they can't deny the weird non-material aspects of it. There are weird things that it does with consciousness. The technology itself doesn't behave in ways that we understand physics, doesn't behave in ways that we understand the material world. The abduction phenomenon is so rich with this other view of how reality works and how our consciousness works and how mind works. And all of that is more connected to these nuts and bolts craft we see in the sky than a lot of people realize. And once that, dam is open, it's going to be impossible to ignore, and it's going to challenge a lot of our institutions that are sort of solidified around a materialist mindset, that materialist view of not just the nature of reality, but the nature of mind, nature of consciousness. And the UFO, already I see it happening in the academics that are studying, the new academics, the sort of recent revolution of ufology. They are going through a transformation themselves. I can see it in the books that they write. When they go on podcasts, they enter into it wanting to understand the nuts and bolts, the craft that people see, and all of a sudden they are having to grapple with the idea of Bigfoot and goblins and abduction experiences that make no sense, and the bizarre nature of UFOs that does not match with material reality as we understand it from the very scientism way that we approach reality. So I see it acting as a catalyst to sort of break apart the strangle that materialism has on our institutions and how we understand reality.
Fascinating. Well, I guess we shall wait and see. Do appreciate your sharing your thoughts, and appreciate the discussion on that, and looking forward to taking that up another time if we do have time. I do see a number of questions in the chat window, so I do want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask their questions. Before we did that, I did have one question that I wanted to ask Gary about, specifically on the subject of plant medicines and psilocybin in particular. There was a question about plant medicines. There was a question about psilocybin and mushrooms that came up at our last Q&A with Jim back on March 2nd, not too long ago, as well as a question I think that came up about plant medicines at a channeling session on January 27th. And I know, Gary, you mentioned at our last Q&A that you had some experience with psilocybin. I think you brought it up as part of our pop quiz. And just a note to everyone, a lot of the good stuff in the Q&As happens in the pop quiz. So might not want to skip that. Otherwise, yeah, you did mention that you had some experience with it. And I was wondering if you can share a little bit more about that, just in terms of your own experience and how that may or may not relate to the experience of others, since I'm sure there are many in the Law of One community who have also used that particular plant medicine.
A lot of failing happens in those pop quizzes because your questions are far too difficult or just outside of our knowledge. But thank you for the question, Jonathan. At the beginning, I always like to disclaim who we are and our importance. I mean, we're three people being who are the focus of a Q&A, and I just want to clarify that in no way intends that in no way means that we see ourselves as having any kind of special or unique knowledge. We obviously have a unique relationship in terms of we are the three of the present stewards of research. So that's a unique life path and stuff to share there, of course, but we don't necessarily know more about the Law of One. I mean, the Law of One is infinity itself. It's the true nature of everybody. So we're all learning from each other in terms of the Law of One. So your question was how to grow and distribute psilocybin. Was that it?
As a fundraiser? No. Just in terms of spiritual growth and evolution. And the law.
Yeah, so I have had a long-standing addictive patterns in my incarnation, specifically with the devil nicotine. From a young age, I was in middle school, and my cousins and I and our local friends, we had sneak cigarettes from adults. And so I've had this on-off. It got hardwired, that dopamine-seeking expectation got hardwired into my neural pathways at a young age, and I've had this on-off relationship with it ever since. And it's dogged me. I've been unable to shake it, and it's been a companion along the ride of the spiritual journey, through all my meditation, through all my study. has been something that has kind of overtaken me, and the the need to heal the underlying patterns about for that contribute to this nicotine addiction, and that call has been growing, had been growing stronger in me because it's so disruptive to my life. And I liken it to, there's that meme of it's like 2 or 3 slides, and it's a cartoon guy riding on a bike, and he jams a stick into the spokes of his front tire, barrels over the bike, and then the meme is usually like him blaming something else outside of himself for his own self-sabotage. Well, I am that guy with the damned nicotine, and however, I'm not blaming anybody else, but I'm literally sabotaging my own self by this behavior, by this compulsive behavior, by watching myself do something that I know intellectually is to my own harm. I mean, it's harm on so many levels. But I have had such difficulty putting up some kind of wall to stop myself. I've had various periods where I would go without, but I'm going to get to the psilocybin in just a second, but this is the backstory to it, what led me to it. And I try to put in various measures to stop myself, but when the craving arises, particularly like when we're having some alcohol, I just bulldoze right through it and override it and watch myself do this thing that I know is harmful to myself. It's a part of it. One more piece of the nicotine before turning to plant medicine, and that's that as I try to understand my patterns and analyze myself, I see that I exist, as I think a lot of people do. I don't think I'm unique in this at all, but in a range of pain, from mild discomfort to exquisite agony at times, and it's just kind of at the level of existence, just living here in a body, combined with and intensified by, whatever specific life experiences I've had. But that leads me to seek out these sources like nicotine, like alcohol, as a coping mechanism, as a way as a medication. And the thing about these powerful chemicals like nicotine or like alcohol is that with, with the least possible amount of effort and work, a significant change in consciousness is created. I feel relief, that initial euphoria, and my strong will then just chases that, says, yes, I want more of that. And the next drink or the next puff, it had become vaping the past few years, will ease the pain even further, will make me happier. And of course it's a lie, it's a false, I'm giving myself over to this false narrative, but it's like it's a false salvation. It's like, this is the escape, this is how I get out of it. And then I just become anesthetized, and the further I go into it, the more I drift onto an anesthetized island, and I don't want to come back. Because there's that allure of oblivion, of erasure of the self and all its pain. And of course it doesn't work. It's a failed project from the beginning, but that's the dysfunction of the addiction. So, I mean, I'm also feeling my age too. I'm 44 years old and asking myself, like, when am I gonna, as our peoples would say, get my shit together, and not in a self-damning or judgmental way, but in a way that stops putting that stick in the spoke so that I can fully fulfill the potential I sense in me for self-realization, for greater service to LL research, for greater service to others. So enter sacred plant medicine, which could be a solid 5 to 10 minutes more if I get going. So we can make it a part 2, and at the next Q&A, I could talk about my specific experience.
Sure. I appreciate your share. I just did want to interject at this point just to thank you for the trust and vulnerability you're showing and sharing these very personal details with not just the people on the Zoom call, but with everyone on the internet. And I did want to assure you that I would acknowledge that I'm pretty sure everybody has some form of addiction, whether it's nicotine or alcohol or cannabis or video games or porn or self-righteousness or you name it. Everyone has some form of addiction. And I personally, as someone who consumes cannabis and alcohol on a pretty regular basis, I really have no idea how anybody's getting through late third density Earth without medicating themselves in some fashion. So just wanted to reassure you that you're in good company in that respect. And yeah, would love to hear. So how did psilocybin enter this?
Okay, and thank you so much for that reflection, Jonathan. And thank you. As you know, at the Seattle Coming Home event, I had my first at Coming Home events. Attendees, all of us, us included, have the opportunity to offer something during the event, an hour and a half talk, presentation, activity, etc. And I had a focus on addiction, where I shared the stuff that I'm sharing now, and it was the first time sharing so openly and freely with others. And like you said, Jonathan, there was everybody, well, has an addiction of some sort. And it was such a raw and vulnerable and beautiful space for people. It wasn't just, everybody listening to me, but going around the circle and sharing. People have such heartbreaking stories and beautiful stories and stories of triumph and healing and balancing and self-realization. So psilocybin is something of a miracle technology, if you want to call it, a miracle being, miracle teacher, and spirit, in that it facilitates the one's ability to tap their inner healer, as Ra might describe it, if used very carefully and with reverence and respect and so forth, which is how I approached it, very, very intentionally, with the purpose of healing, not necessarily just to stop this addiction, but to access and heal the underlying patterns that contribute to this addiction. So, from a trusted friend who invests a lot of energy into the cultivation, I was blessed to have access to some. So at created a very sacred container along with Trish's help and support, including cleaning and smudging and incense and setting of intention and blending of my energy with the mushroom teacher and so forth, set about on that course. And I started out with emulating like what they do in John Hopkins clinical trials and what they do in therapeutic settings. That's, to go on an inner journey by putting on a face mask, headphones, had a sweet playlist, and lying horizontal on a bed. And there I expected to stay the whole time. But I eventually left that experience. I'll skip over my time on that bed because it was a mid-August day and it was mid-80s and little humidity outside. It was gorgeous, blue skies. And I did a fair amount of LSD in my teens and a couple of years after high school, and always in a recreational setting, always late at night, drinking cigarettes, laughing our asses off often. But I I was unaware of its therapeutic and spiritual potential then, its power. And it's a misuse of this substance, definitely. And so I've had this looming regret my whole life that I never used psychoactive substances to go out in nature and feel the subjective experience of a tree or a forest, or look up at the sky and commune and get outside of my own shell, my own imprisoned left brain analytical beingness. So I was called outside called to go outside on this beautiful day. I crossed paths with Trish on the way, and I'll skip over most of that episode, but the Red Ray was being very vocal, seeing Trish, who was looking beautiful in a summer dress. And I was feeling a call to have some private time with her, and she was game too. But I had also told her about like how I wanted to go outside, and she saw this conflict, and she said, well, you know, why don't you go outside and I will set a timer for you? Because I have no ability to manage time in these states. The default mode network that is such a practical oriented person as I am just goes offline. So she set a timer for myself. I walk outside and I'm Dorothy, you know, stepping into Oz when it's, you know, moving from a black and white world. It's so beautiful. And we have a gorgeous character-filled tree that is a mulberry. It's got like an 80-foot span. Huge, huge tree, very old. And I was called to the mulberry. So I walk down in my bare feet, and I've got shorts and a t-shirt, and I sit at the base of the mulberry, and I'm just enthralled. This story does lead to insight. I'm don't want to just give you a play-by-play of you know, what my senses are experiencing. And I am enthralled with the dirt below my feet and legs. My gaze goes up to the bark of the mulberry, and I see this intricate ecosystem in very detailed, vivid, rich life, and little bugs walking around. And I was just so in love with all of it. And I'm called to put my hand on the trunk of the mulberry. And for the first time in my life, despite my deep spiritual commitments and the expanse of my philosophy, I have not experienced much, if at all, conscious contact with intelligence outside of myself. Obviously, I'm an instrument alongside of Trish and Austin, but that interface is through my own imagination and thoughts. I don't have a very visceral sense of I'm working with, there's a distinct other being here with me. But I began to feel the subjective awareness of this mulberry tree, and a rudimentary form of communication was moving between myself and this tree, and it imparted things to me. I got this sense that it had a feminine spirit. The tree was a she, and I got a sense of its immense age, and two key insights emerged from this dialogue in this moment. And that was that like the tree, as it were, let me know that if I wanted to experience its reality, I needed to quiet down and focus and be and rest in beingness and witness. And in this, unpacking this was this message of eternity. That, you know, as the seasons come and go, as, you know, summer turns to fall to winter, as forms are born and die, as creation and destruction cycle, I am here. I am witnessing this. And so my gaze was outward, and it was, again, mid-August, past noon. So the sun was setting, and the angle of the sun coming through, like filtering and shimmering through the leaves above me was gorgeous. And I was under a huge dome, a canopy of this mulberry tree, a golden and green dome. And I'm watching bugs flit about, and there's just this piece which is witnessing life unfold organically. And there was also the sense of the return, that the pain that I live with is a function and outgrowth of estrangement from that which I was touching into, estrangement from the true universe, from the mother, from from the Creator, from my true nature. And that estrangement creates a condition of living in a conceptual world, living in a world of thought, living in a world of dream, divorced from reality. And that being not a condition that's unique to me, but to humanity itself generally. And thus, the healing is a return. I don't know what the right verbiage is, but a disidentifying from that conceptual world, leaving it behind, and coming back to true nature, leaving the awakening from the dream, leaving the illusion. And
So did you come away, if I may interject, did you come away with any feeling of healing over the addictive behaviors that you were seeking?
Yeah, please always feel free to interject at any time I'm speaking. It opened the door. It didn't create some kind of sea change in me or conversion, but began the process, which, to cut to the end, I mean, that was pretty much it. There's key epiphanies, and the beauty of connecting with great Mother Mulberry. It's so beautiful. To cut to the end, shortly after the Seattle coming home, because I was still in the throe of my habit then. Thanksgiving was something about me. The session that I facilitated at Coming Home last year was super supportive and helpful, and heart opening. And then sometime after Thanksgiving, I just made a decision, and it has been 3.5 months now. I've got an app on my phone that counts the dates with no vaping. This is the longest I've gone in years since before the pandemic. And yeah, feel so much better. So thanks for hanging on with me, everybody, for that long-winded story. And thanks for asking me, Jonathan, and happy to get to individual questions now.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I know this is a very deeply personal subject, and again, you're showing a lot of trust and vulnerability and being so transparent with everyone on this. And I like to think that's a good thing, and I hope you all know that we all love you and care about you. And I'm pretty sure all of us can relate to the experiences you've described to some degree. And I've had a number of experiences with mushrooms and found them to be very intense enough that it's not something I would particularly seek on a regular basis. But I did definitely find them helpful, and it was definitely part of the spiritual journey that led me to where I am now. If I can ask one more thing, I know that in the session with Quo where this subject came up, I believe Quo said at some point something to the effect that mushrooms or psilocybin, or I guess any psychedelics for that matter, can show a person what is possible with that crutch or with that assistance. But as usual, they encourage people to realize that there's nothing you can experience with those plant medicines that you're not capable of doing through meditation or other spiritual practice and discipline. Did you have any thoughts? And I guess I could ask anybody on this, or Gary, I guess just to wrap this up, did you have any thoughts on that particular passage and the meaning, how that might apply to anyone who's listening to this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. And first, I want to make a quick plug for there's a series on Netflix called How to Change Your Mind, which is based off Michael Pollan's book of the same name. And there's a whole episode dedicated to psilocybin. And Trish and I watched it, and we were in tears in terms of the effects it had, helping 2 case studies, people to heal, including one woman, maybe in her 70s, I don't know, who had a terminal diagnosis, and had some kind of mortal terror, and thanks to the guidance or the teacher spirit of the mushrooms, was able to release that fear, which is a miracle, which is amazing. So yes, what in terms of its function on the spiritual path, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. It does show what's possible, but doesn't, and profound work can be done in a very intense short period of time relative to other modalities, including like a talk therapy and so forth. But it takes integration. It takes a lot of work afterwards. There's some saying, but yeah, it is a tool of power and has lots of potential for misuse and has lots of potential for being dangerous for the person, including in disarranging themselves by opening up a circuit up here before they're ready, before they're got their house in order down below, so to speak, and they're balanced sufficiently and can withstand that increased intensity of light. But one has to consult their heart to know whether this is an appropriate use for their spiritual journey. But ultimately, and to conclude and to resonate with what you said, Jonathan, we are reality itself. I mean, the truth that we seek is us. It's our core nature, and we're just finding pathways to go inside into our heart, principally. And meditation is by far the more, I think, reliable long-term means of using one's catalyst, integrating daily experience, and gaining that insight. But there's there's no shortcut
For sure.
to evolution.
For sure. Yeah, thank you again for sharing all of that. And we may perhaps come back to and revisit that another time. But I do see quite a few questions in the chat window, so I apologize to folks who have been waiting to ask their questions, but hopefully this was a worthy topic to do a deep dive on. Otherwise, I do see John has a question, and then I do see Linda, and why don't we go ahead and start with John?
Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet y'all. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. It's wonderful to meet you. So I was reading recently about Carla and some of her struggles with meditation and how she really kind of had trouble kind of quieting the monkey mind, so to speak. And I thought, because I struggle with the same thing, and I thought, well, man, if Carla struggled with that, what hope do I have? So I'm curious about, how you guys, do you have a particular type of meditation? Do you kind of rotate among the different types? And what difference has it made to you, both as a channel and just as a human kind of going through this experience?
Great question. Trish, would you like to start? Do you mind?
Sure. So I'm probably the least experienced and probably least diligent of the three of us in terms of my meditation practice. But I have no like set school that I follow. My only I guess rule is that I focus on my breath and allow that eventually to take over. The focusing on the breath thereby eliminates thought outside of focusing on the breath, which isn't exactly fully quieting the mind, right? Because you're still focusing thought on one thing. But it is helpful to deafen the outside noise. And I have ADHD, so that's extra helpful to have something to try to tether oneself to. And I have no set schedule that I do it. I get my most of my experience has been through channelings, and when we used to have meditation in place of channelings as well. But I also find other ways to meditate, if you will, like devotional practices. I find ways to clear my mind when I'm doing things that don't look like meditation, right? Like washing the dishes, washing the dogs, cooking. So for me, meditation really has no set form and has no, set rules other than when I try to focus on my breath.
Interesting. I did not know that. I know you mentioned at our last Q&A that you identified with people who had ADHD, but I don't think I ever knew that that was something you yourself were dealing with. Do you find that meditation helps with that, or do you find that it's just, do you find that meditation helps with that? Does it just make it more difficult to meditate?
Yeah, when I first attempted to meditate. It was very difficult for me to focus in that way, to not let, outside thoughts come in. If anything, I think having like I don't know, the experience of the channeling in terms of the ritual that goes into that helped me kind of establish this pathway. So now that when I do have this practice of meditation, it's very simple. So
That makes sense.
I think it took that experience to set that pathway, because without it, I was not successful, but there is no real, successful meditation. The intent is the success.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I would think a lot of people would find that helpful and enlightening. Austin, would you care to share about your meditation practice experience?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question, John. You mentioned mindfulness. That's definitely like my number one inroad into meditation. That was what finally made meditation click for me. So my personal practice, I don't meditate like a long time. I do thankfully, I'm able to maintain a mostly daily practice, usually in the evenings, and usually for about 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes less. I think the just daily ritual of it is one of the biggest benefits I get out of it. And that mindfulness angle has been one of the biggest benefits I've had in my life completely. If mindfulness and mindfulness meditation aren't necessarily the same thing. Mindfulness meditation can help you cultivate a state of mindfulness that you can then bring into the rest of your life. And that's sort of like how Trish was talking about finding states of meditation while doing other things. I think that's kind of a take on mindfulness. And that, I think, has allowed me essentially to do what Trish was saying, like find moments of meditation when I'm not sitting down with my eyes closed, and finding ways to completely at least attempt to absorb and be aware of the moment and everything that it contains without that conscious analyzing mind kicking in, the inner chatter doing its own thing, but really trying to appreciate whatever is in front of me and allow just existence and awareness rather than all this other stuff that comes with being human, which I think has a similar benefit as just simple meditation as well. So mindfulness meditation is definitely my biggest thing. And then just one other thing that I heard that has been really helpful for me to understand the process of meditation. It was in a book called, sorry if I get this wrong, The Willpower Instinct is what I think it's called. And she talks about meditation in this way where when you have a bad meditation, when you're constantly finding your attention drawn away and having to pull your attention back, you can look at that almost like resistance training for muscles, where the more you have to do that, the more that skill of pulling your focus back into the present moment becomes available to you outside of meditation too. So even if you're not finding that steady state and you're not able to quiet the monkey mind, there's still a benefit to sitting down and practicing that in a meditative state where that skill does develop and you're able to bring it to the rest of your life. And Rod talks about focus as being sort of a very primary aspect of the spiritual path, and I think that's true. Being able to bring your focus to your present moment, and become aware of when it's not on the present moment, even if your meditation isn't a good meditation, you're building that muscle, I think. And that was really helpful for me to understand in my practice. And when I got to the end of a meditation and I didn't find a meditative state at all, I could still walk away thinking, well, at least I, was exercising that focus muscle.
What a great analogy, the whole resistance training. That is really helpful. I think, yes, I'm going to meditate on that a bit. Thank you for sharing that. Gary, anything to share on your own meditation practice experience?
Yeah. Great question, John. And what did I want to say? That I think it's best not to evaluate your meditation and its success or non-success ratio. I think the intent to do it and the following through by whatever that looks like for you. For me, it's formal sitting meditation that works best for me, though I try to exercise mindfulness at other times of the day. The intent and the carrying out is sending a signal to your subconscious that you're wanting to be receptive, that you're wanting to receive and understand yourself better, and you will have assistance. Also, particularly if you do formal meditation or seated meditation, your body is still for that period. And just think of what you're not doing too. You're not on your phone, or you're not, watching TV. You're not engaged in conversation. So, and presumably you are in a quiet environment. Maybe you're listening to music or guided meditation, but that alone is therapeutic, I would say. And in terms of my own practice, for me, it's very basic, bare bones. Um, in terms of bringing my attention to a single point. For me, that's watching the inhale and exhale of my breath, like through my nose specifically. And the point of that, bringing the attention to here, is to cultivate single pointedness. So that the more I do that, the more that the monkey mind quiets down, the more I am exercising self present moment awareness. I'm being less and less pulled by thought about the future, reflection about the past, or, the million things that go through the head. And instead, I'm being present. We spend most of our day not being present. So that is a miracle in and of itself, just to rest in beingness and being there in that moment with your body. And it is very much like a muscle, in that the more that you do it, the stronger that muscle becomes. Your attention will be pulled away an infinite times 1,000 number of times. It's inevitable. I don't think anybody is born with a mind that they can focus for meditation. We're conditioned for a monkey on steroids mind. But when you eventually become aware that, okay, my attention has drifted, you just gently bring it back to rest on the breath, not not in controlling the self, not in trying to manufacture or engineer a specific state, but just in witnessing. At least this is the way I do it. Witnessing what is already happening. If you have a boisterous, loud mind, then you're witnessing that. Then you're learning more about yourself. And finally, I would add that our attention is really where our true power is. And our attention is claimed by a million other things. Who among us can really harness our intention in a conscious, sustained way and say, I'm going to gently hold the attention here, without force. That's another thing about the single pointedness, is that the attention comes to rest on its own, such that it becomes effortless. It doesn't take effort to, all right, I'm going to hold it here, hold it here, hold it here. It just learns, it starts to incline in that direction. And that's where our true choice making is. And I had I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat at a Buddhist style retreat, and meditated so much that at one point, the thinking mind kind of disappeared. And with it, all the pageantry that goes on in our heads, the conversations we're having in our minds, the characters that move through the stage of our minds, the arguments, the fantasies, the worries about the future, it all that compulsive talker dissipated. And I had this profound gnosis sort of insight that when that goes, where is the suffering? It's that voice that's creating the misery that I'm living with, which is another reason why meditation is the more organic. I don't know if that's the adjective I want to use, but is the stronger, more long-term, powerful, reliable tool for spiritual evolution.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. Most definitely. I think Linda actually had a meditation-related question she wanted to ask also. Linda, would you like to unmute your mic and ask?
Oh, hey guys. Gary, we did not remember when you guys came and stayed with us. neither one of us recognized that you had a smoking issue at that time. So were you just scooting out the back door to smoke or something, or what was that about?
You didn't smell it in the upstairs bathroom?
No.
And what did you do to your hair? It's a different color. What's happened?
I finally decided to embrace my elderly woman. So I cut off all the red and bleached it out. So we're letting it grow out natural.
So is that silver or is that white? It's hard to see.
God only knows.
It looks
Pure
great.
white light is what it is.
We'll see what happens.
No,
Well,
that
anyway, my question had to do, well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Gary.
no, it wasn't important.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, my question had to do with, usually in my daily earth meditations, I always make a request of the archangels and angelic forces and the Confederation to please send thoughts of unconditional love and brotherhood and acceptance into the minds of people like Putin and Netanyahu and a US politician who shall remain unnamed at this point in time, to send these thoughts to them as a way of hoping that it will filter down into the way they are on Earth today. Now, I began from something Quo said to think that by doing so, I was depolarizing myself by trying to put what I wanted to occur on these people. So that's depolarizing. So I stopped doing that. But Morris suggested that perhaps what I could do is to ask the angelic forces and the Confederation to put these ideas into the higher self of these entities who I'm trying to influence with love and light and unconditional love, blah, blah, blah. And in that way, I wouldn't be working with them. It would be up to the higher selves as to whether they let that filter on down. Now, since then, I haven't been doing anything. I'm having a real hard time doing love and light for these people. The light I can do, but the love is kind of dissipating there. How do you guys deal with that, or do you?
That is a great question. We don't really have an order for responders. Trish, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a thing I feel I've struggled with myself. Feeling like at times that there's a struggle to find that space in my soul and in my heart to let love through. Wishing light upon the earth and love upon the earth, very generally speaking, it comes easily, but sometimes the pain that comes with actions or situations makes it very difficult. Honestly, if the question is, how do I get myself back into the space of the being able to focus in on love, I fake it till I make it. I tell myself I do sincerely love, or I'm sincerely putting that energy into love. And almost like the practice of fake laughing to the point where you just begin laughing, it just opens up that spring. You find the humanity or the humanity of that other self or that situation. It's still not always easy, but yeah.
I appreciate that. I think most people could relate to that.
Right,
Gary, go ahead, Linda.
is it right of us to make requests of angelic forces and the Confederation to try and put thoughts in the minds of these individuals? Or else to the thoughts of this to their higher self? Or am I still depolarizing myself by asking it to go to their higher selves?
Any thoughts on that, Austin?
I think that's a really good question. Maybe a good one for Kuo. Like the metaphysics of that, I think, are really interesting to contemplate. And so I've definitely prefaced my thoughts about it and that they are just sort of my initial thoughts without a chance to really meditate on it. And I kind of approach what you're talking about from the perspective of how Ra talks about healing. That the healer is not doing the healing in the healing scenario. The person who is wanting to be healed has to be open to it. The healer can't make that person be healed. And on top of that, at least in my understanding of healing, the healer accepts that person no matter their configuration. They aren't necessarily desiring that that person change in any way. They're wanting to create a condition where the perfection and the imperfection are realized in the light and the love of the Creator. And if that is accepted by that person, then that is results in the healing. And so I would kind of look at this in a similar scenario where if you are wanting a specific outcome necessarily, you want them to change in this specific way, whether it's by infusing the individuals with ideas of love and light or their higher selves. I think both of those scenarios are kind of placing an expectation of an outcome, hoping for an expectation of an outcome. So I think that the way that I approach world healing when I do those sorts of visualizations is from that aspect of the healer. Like I am simply opening my heart to the world and wanting the love and the light of the Creator to flow through it in whatever is the best way. And I can visualize and think about people or situations. I try not to place expectation or invoke any specific change, but only allow the love of the Creator to manifest in the way that it is able to in that moment. And just a one additional thought, I also, there are people, world figures, people in my own life, just in general, where it is harder, like you're saying, to think about them in love and light and giving them love and light, asking for them to be in love and light. And the way that I try to approach that is to, flip that mirror and realize that that is my inner Putin. That's my inner, whatever figure it is. I'm having a hard time finding out how to love that person. By sending them love and light, I'm actually sending love and light to that portion inside of myself that I'm having a hard time accepting. And, we can think about who they are and their actions in the world and not be okay with what they're doing. But ultimately, it is that spiritual relationship with that inner person that they're reflecting to us, that, we are attempting to do here. And I think just like Trish said, faking it till you make it, you're reiterating a desire to love that person. And I think that's why that works, is because even if you can't find the love, knowing you want to and expressing that you want to, and by doing that constantly, I think that is just as powerful as being able to do it.
Austin, that really spoke to me because my meditation basically is like a 20-minute Reiki session to the earth. So the fact that you brought it back to the Reiki, that really spoke to me. That is immensely helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question too.
Okay, Gary, do you have any thoughts that you'd like to interject?
Yeah, actually, Trish and Austin captured it pretty well. I would add an additional nuanced riff, and that's that I think it might, like Austin said, I don't fully understand the metaphysics of it, but I think it might be veering a little bit towards manipulation to try to be like Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception and get into their mind and plant thoughts that you would hope that they think. The positively oriented entity wants, of course, to build a positive, loving, harmonious world, but only insofar as other entities choose that. They want to make the opportunity there. They want to make it appealing. They want to create an ambiance of love that would be so strong and compelling that entities of their own free will would choose that, but not by being manipulated into choosing that. So like Austin was saying, in terms of the healer and the one to be healed, think we want to see the self to whom we are praying from the highest possible perspective. We want to hold them as a being of perfection, however horrendous their choices as an incarnate actor are, and send them love and love them genuinely from that perspective. And that creates an ambiance whereby, who knows, it might impact their heart and give them a renewed opportunity to choose the light instead of the darkness. And then finally, I think, as both Austin and Trish kind of echoed, we are also working on ourselves in prayer. We are purifying our own hearts the more that we can engage that practice. So when you're praying for somebody to love, say that certain orange colored politician, you are in that prayer, you're not engaging in hate, you're not using expletives, right? Understand, right though they would be. So, you're switching your own vibration, you're lifting your vibration, and therefore that is in turn necessarily lifting the vibration of the planet.
Thank you all. That has been a wonderful answer. I really appreciate it.
Elaine, you had a follow-up question?
Yes. Thank you, Linda, for asking this question. It was exactly word for word what I have been wanting to ask for so long. And I think getting to that place where we can just love them unconditionally, which is what we're here to learn, it's so difficult when we look at their actions and who they are right now and the repercussions of their actions. And what I have found that helps me is I literally visualize all of these people as little children, and they're all in a room and they're fighting over their toys, and it's just so easy to love them, to wrap your heart around them, and just, you need a hug. You need love. It's so obvious, and like Ra and Quo says, love is always the answer. And so like getting to that place is so difficult, because of the circumstances of the illusion and the chaos and stuff. But I have just really found that it's actually kind of easy to hug and genuinely feel love for he whose name we're not going to say,
Or anyone
But
else
he
that you
was an
feel some way
innocent
about?
child, and he is an innocent, beautiful child inside still,
Thank you, Elaine. Yeah,
Anyway.
thank you for sharing that. That's perhaps a good segue into a couple of questions that Josh sent in. You might have addressed this already. Well, you have addressed this already to a fairly large degree, but Josh was wondering how any of the three of you practice the service to others path in your daily life, and perhaps specifically any practices that help you open your heart in unconditional love on a daily basis. Anything you could add to what's already been said?
I would just add, in terms of a practice of service to others, I'm always thinking about there's more that I could be doing outwardly. If you look at it and it looks like service that you're doing to others. But the way that I typically integrate that into my life is when there is a situation where somebody generates catalyst, there's a situation that generates catalyst. I hold the intention of service to others in order to then come into myself and process that and try to find love for whatever it is that is causing that inner turmoil, the disharmony that I feel, and just, big or small catalyst. Always look at that sort of inner lack of peace as a catalyst for me to utilize in order to find love in that situation, in that moment, and figure out why it's doing that, so that I can then more fully become present and shining the love and the light of the Creator as it is known to my inner self.
Thank you. Gary, Trish, anything to add?
I recommend getting married. It's a great laboratory to practice service to others. Yeah, it's like polarizing one's consciousness is a whole way of life. It's how one embarks upon the spiritual journey itself. Is this Joshua Silverman who
Yes. Yeah, Josh was not able to join us on the call today, but he did send in the question.
The bearded one.
The bearded one.
Yeah, so to pluck a couple out from the milieu, I would say empathy, placing intentional practices to place oneself in another's shoes is critical in practicing service to others. I mean, service to others doesn't technically need another person. You could polarize, though I think it would be much more difficult in a cave by yourself. But where the rubber really meets the road is in terms of how we relate to others. So sensitivity to their suffering, to their reality, getting out of one's own head, that's a key practice for me, among other things. And just study too, I would say. Like sources like the Law of One, but other sources of spiritual insight, because the conscious mind has a capacity to set the compass. And without my bedrock principles, without that I've cultivated over the years, without my intellectual understanding, or I think I would be a lot more unconscious, a lot more blind, like just blindly enacting the patterns of the world. Instead, if I have a compass set towards love, I can more easily see when I'm veering from love, though not always. You don't wake up right away when you're just triggered and blindly enacting a pattern, but you know that this isn't unconditional love. And where is this coming from, and how do I understand myself and do the work? But how about you?
Yeah, I think just to build off that is just having some type of intentional practice of listening, being able to, and that comes into play with empathy and the learning aspect, but just being able to take in what one hears from others, and having no judgment, just witnessing, I think.
You're good at that.
Thank you. I think helps to provide some orientation outside of oneself and towards others.
Indeed. Yeah, the no judgment part is definitely something I struggle with on a daily basis. Sarah, I believe you had a question. Would you like to unmute your mic?
Yes, hi. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for all that you do. But I have a question, like, how do you connect with like your higher self on a day-to-day basis? And like, how would you tap into like hear their guidance or advice?
That is a great question. Austin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think it's also a really broad question in my experience, because I think there are some pretty specific ways you can go about that. Um, like, for instance, in my spiritual path, I have a pretty consistent practice of vocally channeling my higher self. And that's something that I did even before channeling for LL research. And, I just learned techniques of vocal channeling from books and from Carla's instructions on our website. But there's so many other ways that you can get guidance from your higher self that, I know Kuo's referenced some various things, but just in my understanding personally, um, your higher self can give you guidance through your dreams. So taking up a practice of dream interpretation, once you start developing your understanding of your dream language, I think it becomes a lot more coherent than you might experience on a regular basis. Um, you can develop an intuition, basically, in my understanding of receiving an intuitive guidance from your higher self, figuring out, how something feels in your heart in any given scenario, especially once you develop a meditative practice and take a situation into your heart and explicitly ask your higher self to offer you guidance. Even if you don't hear words, I think that the feedback that you can get and how you feel and how your intuition allows you to relate to it can be guidance from your higher self. I know that a lot of people see synchronicity as guidance from their higher self or from their guides. So, if there's a certain situation that something related pops up a lot, then that might be your higher self trying to give you a sign. And just developing sort of regular basis of attempting to receive communication and asking for communication, I think everybody will probably develop their own method of communication. And I think primarily in my experience too, it takes a lot of patience and practice and consistency of making that request and being mindful of what might be coming to you in all of these different forms.
Cute. Trish?
Yeah, I think for me, synchronicity is my big thing. Noticing where there's repetition or where there's strange alignments. I used to have, I think, a much stronger relationship or closer relationship with my higher self. It's fallen a little bit by the wayside just with daily life and routine. But as Austin said, having patience and presence too, being mindful of how, your higher self might appear to you, and an open mind to see it. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you. Gary?
Austin covers the bases really well. I would add one potential other modality to consider, and that's hypnotherapy. That state can make the higher self more accessible to the self. But I would just share the principle that Ra describes how the connection to the higher self while in the incarnate state and the communication with the higher self happens via pathways that are made in the mind. And those pathways are built, as Austin was describing, via intention. And that can manifest uniquely for different people. Personally, I don't have Austin has a very intentional practice. I ask questions, I submit prayers, and I don't feel an immediate sense of feedback or information per se. Maybe there'll be like an intuitive hunch, but for the most part, I just open the question to the universe, and I trust that question will be responded to in some form or another. Maybe it is a thought that pops up into my mind and looks like it's coming from me. Maybe it is the arrangement of circumstance in such a way, or the crossing of paths with an animal on one day, or some other sign or synchronicity.
Indeed. Thank you. Hey, I do see Andre has his hand up, and I just wanted to note that we are already running about half an hour past our normal hour's time. And just out of respect for Gary and Trish's and Austin time, I was hoping we could wrap this up in under 2 hours. And I do see 5 folks who still have questions to ask. So I think I am just asking us all to be mindful of the time here, if that's okay. Andre took his hand down, so I am taking that as an act of thoughtfulness to others. Thank you. There is quite a conversation going on in the chat window, so I do want to encourage folks to continue sharing with each other their experiences there, and that is always a great help. Meanwhile, Ashley, I think you had 2 questions. Would you like to pick one of those questions to ask for now? And then maybe if we have time, we can go back to second question. Right there, Ashley, would you like to unmute your mic and ask a question?
Yes, sorry, I'm talking and I didn't unmute. Hi guys, thank you so much for all that you do and for all that you are. And thank you for sharing your journey. It's a huge inspiration. My first question is just, do you feel like you have been changed by channeling Poe? I know there's some, well, at least in my experience, connecting with higher density beings, I feel like they begin to, over time, maybe rub off on you a little bit. In my experience, they do rub off on you. And it's sort of like this concept, someone once told me, you will be the average of the 5 friends you hang out with. So if you hang out with those who are violent and angry, even if you are not that way, you spend enough time with them, you're going to become maybe short-tempered and it'll progress. And so I've noticed that, but in a positive way, when working with higher density beings, like their thinking patterns, their energy, their ability to flip the states of emotion and psychology and maintain it and that be their normal. That's really, really rubbed off on me to the point where it's like scary. I'm like, okay, who am I? But do you feel like there's been any kind of change like that, like Quo rubbing off on you, their mentality and how you see other people and so on?
That's a
Thank
great
you.
question. Yeah. Austin?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That is really interesting. I think I'd have to sort of think about it from the angle that you're talking about it to really give you a good answer. I think what I would reflect is the process of learning how to channel definitely made an impact on me. So that initial entry into channeling, how we did it, and understanding the path of channeling itself, I think made an impact on my spiritual presence and my spiritual self a pretty significant amount. And then in the terms of how you're talking about sort of Kuo rubbing off on us, I would relate to that question more in the sense of, Kuo is responding to questions from their perspective, and I typically try to take what Kuo says pretty seriously in my own spiritual path, not just in what they're saying now, but what they've said in the past, and, Ra in particular as well. The Law of One, it remains my central guiding light in my spiritual life. And so I'm always trying to integrate those perspectives naturally, whether it's Kuo rubbing off on me through channeling or me attempting to integrate Kuo's wisdom through this sort of other method. I don't know if I could necessarily tell the difference between those two, but in a more general sense, yeah, I think what you're saying is true.
Thank you.
Trish?
I don't know if I could add more to that. It's really well said, Austin.
Gary?
Yeah, Ashley, I think what you said about your own experience is true generally. I think Carla felt very much likewise. And in terms of how that manifests for me, I do find myself saying to other people, I am the principal known to you as Gary often now.
Oh, I love that.
I'm kidding.
Great.
Uh,
Oh, I love
that
it.
that would be obnoxious.
You just say add an
Add an A. Yeah, it very, very, if perceptible at all, very, very subtle residue. I don't know if that is the right word, but
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
cool. Yeah, like a uplift of vibration and expansion of the heart and more circulation of insight inside of me too. And I don't know how
Yeah.
to pinpoint it exactly, or to what to attribute it, but it does seem to be more readily available generally.
Yes, I know what you mean. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Ashley. And if we have time, we'd love to go back and give you a chance to ask your second question. In the meantime, Aram had a question, and then Carolyn and Daniel. Aram, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi guys.
Hello.
It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. I don't know how I still get confused about Earth being a fourth density positive planet, but the inhabitants not necessarily being fourth density, like that it's still something that I have trouble conceptualizing. So my question, I guess, is so the veil doesn't exist after their density, is my understanding, but I'm guessing that the veil thins gradually, so it's not just gonna like lift all at once. I'm guessing it has to do with the evolution of the inhabitants of the planet gradually having the veil thin. And I just want to know if my line of thinking is kind of correct. And then also, well, I'll just start with that.
Question. I'm sorry. We should have set up a batting order here because yes. Always more difficult for the first person to answer, but Austin, I'm just going to keep putting you on the spot if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I think I generally see it the way that you do. It's difficult. Ra gave us the clearest information, but not clear enough for us to understand exactly how that's going to happen. Quo's given us information, but still all up to interpretation because it's very sort of a confusing situation. How exactly does that transition happen? When will it happen? And what is the process going to look like for us? My understanding of the Earth being fourth density is that we are in fourth density time space, which in how I view that is that fourth density is available to us, but the energy patterns of the people on the planet are so sort of tied up in that third density mindset that third density energy, the third density reality is still able to be manifest for us in space time. And it will take the evolution of the people in order to manifest that fourth density that is now available to us. If we were sort of more in tune with all of the processes and metaphysics going on behind the scenes and we were all together as a planet, then that transition would have been natural. And in terms of the thinning of the veil, I see it generally like you do. Ra described the transition of third density bodies to fourth density bodies as a biological process of evolution. So basically, our bodies will change a bit and our third density bodies will become transitional bodies and end in fourth density bodies through this death and rebirth process as a society, as a planetary population. And I think my understanding, or at least my guess, I don't think it's even based on anything, is that the veil will sort of thin through that process of gradually going from third density bodies to fourth density bodies.
Gary, anything to add?
Yeah, there's some seemingly opposite slash contradictory statements that Ra makes. I mean, on one hand, they talk about this transition happening as the striking of the clock upon the hour. There's a schedule. And when the Earth moves into that new band of intelligent energy, fourth density becomes ready and available. But also, exactly like Austin was describing, there seems humanity itself seems to be sort of have their hands on the gate. And when there is a readiness to open it, then fourth density can and will manifest. And as Austin was describing, fourth density is fully here and ready to manifest, but we've got a deadbolt on that gate. Ra describes a precondition being the necessity for pointing of the compass in one direction. Unifying humanity, and we are anything but unified right now. We're across the board fragmented with one desire aiming this way, one aiming that way. We haven't come together as a whole. So I think as we come together as a whole, then fourth density manifests more and more through us. We are the midwaves, so to speak. And there's another seemingly opposite contradictory statements in terms of Ra describes a discrete boundary that is crossed and uses the noun adjective, a quantum leap. Meaning, say one is traveling north from our perspective. Well, one would always have to travel north if they're going to Canada. One is traveling north to Canada. You may gradually, as you get closer to Canada, get the accents start to change a little bit. They say a boot maybe a little bit more strongly. Maybe there's a little bit more blending of Canadian culture, but at some point you're going to cross that boundary and you are no longer in the United States. You are officially in Canada, even though like that in between space on either side may have a lot of cultural overlap and so forth. Or maybe even the example would be more vivid with like two European countries who speak different languages or something. Or if you're going into Quebec, which is French speaking. So that Ra does describe this discrete boundary, and it's not a bound, it's much more discontinuous than the boundary I just made a metaphor of between two countries, because it's a reality change. The third density illusion and the fourth density experience are like the photon itself apparently changes, physics change. So it's a different band of reality altogether. So there is a discontinuity Yet, as Austin was describing, Ra talks about this gradual transition at the same time, whereby through processes of biological evolution, dual body entities are born, which then presumably give birth to entities who more and more can inhabit that fourth density space with fourth density bodies. So how to reconcile those things is a topic we have explored in conscious channeling too. And it's still a challenge, like Austin was describing, to interpret. And then finally, in terms of the veil, I don't know myself. I think I'm in Austin's camp in terms of its thinning, but there is and as you were presupposing that there is a thinning, but there's a chance, who knows, that the curtains come up all at once as that discontinuous quantum leap boundary, or jump rather, is made over that, quote, discrete boundary.
Thank you. Wow, that is a great question. I had not even thought of that. I would love to move on to the next question from Carolyn.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Let me turn this off. I was gonna let Daniel go, but I don't see him on the call because I really liked his question, but there was a synchronicity in Aram's question and the answers in terms of, I can't tell if it's just my tapping into it or if there's this exponential growth in people. Like it feels like we're almost a social memory complex, and I feel like this strife is superficial, like a last-ditch effort for this stuff to come up. Like there's like nobody wants this war to happen. Nobody wants these awful things to happen, and it seems like there's like 3 guys in power trying to do it, and everyone's like, wait a minute, none of us are on board with this. And so I don't know if it's that I just tapped into this like-mindedness or if there is an exponential growth in people wanting to connect more deeply. I don't know if that question is coherent. So sorry if it's not.
Could you try rephrasing the question? I'm not quite sure if I
Yes.
got it.
I couldn't tell if there was, since the raw contact, has there been more people coming online exponentially, or is it just that I'm noticing it because I'm due to all this? Like, because you guys have all been in
That
this
makes
much
sense.
longer. Okay.
That makes sense.
Good.
Anyone care to field that one?
So much harder when we have to choose ourselves.
I know.
Jim here.
Do you have any thoughts on it? Trish, do you have any thoughts on it?
Oh, Austin, you were starting. Did you?
I was going to offer it to you since you hadn't talked in a little while.
That's a really great question. From, I guess from our perspective, being a part of this organization, it definitely seems like there's more people. There's an increase of people who are at least finding resonance with this material, who are finding healing, who are finding themselves on some type of spiritual journey. And I hear that reflected, with people outside of the people who find resonance with this material. I find, that family members who maybe were pigeonholed in like a certain religious sect are starting to ask questions or think more deeply. I don't know if I could personally make, any kind of claim that that's something that's happening on a larger scale. But I do wonder if, the state of affairs here on this planet now, where connection is so much easier globally, right? You're not just connecting with the people in your tribe. There's now the internet and social media and all various different ways that one can broaden their horizons and connect with others outside. I have to wonder if that is also a contributing factor to this springboarding, right? This more extensive desire for connection, and then maybe inspiring a more spiritual track.
It sure seems that way. Yeah. Austin, similar perspective, different?
Yeah, I think very similar perspective. Like Trish said, we have a unique perspective. It's difficult. There's probably a lot of confirmation bias in how we see things. Because I know that a lot of people if you ask them, they would report the opposite. They think the world's getting, worse and worse, and that people are getting worse and worse. So I think that there is sort of a confirmation bias present, particularly with social media and the internet. Like the worst things filter up to be put in front of our faces. The most controversial, emotionally charged things end up in front of our faces. So I do think that if you look behind that and kind of see what is going on outside of that context. I personally think that there is a positive shift. And Kuo has said that, the craziness, the seeming chaos of the world that is very present is part of the process of the fourth density being born. It's essentially, we're experiencing catalysts on a much more collective level where, even just decades ago, if there was a war going on in a certain area of the world, we would hear about it sporadically. We might not be familiar with it. Right now, it's immediately right in front of our faces. And manipulated information right in front of our faces. Though we have this sort of awareness that's much different than it was in the past. And we're much more connected, like Trish was saying. And I think that really makes the catalyst something that we deal with collectively like a social memory complex. We're trying to sort these things out, in my perspective, to cohere as a social memory complex. And I think that is a difficult process of a lot of struggle, but it's something that's happening quicker and more collectively.
Well said. Anything to add, Gary?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And before I respond, Jonathan, I would ask if we could display our hip hop prowess after this question. It's 8:20 here, and we haven't eaten yet, and Trisha's gastrointestinal schedule
Oh, shoot.
particularly needs food sooner. So,
You bet.
um,
We would be glad to. And do you have anything to add on this
I
question?
do. Like Trish and Austin, it's hard to know. Are we in a bubble, or we have bias confirmation, or bias selection? But I do 100% believe that the light is growing. People are awakening. I wouldn't call it exponential. I am only guessing, of course, but uh, it would seem geometric if I were to measure it. Particularly as I look at the past, since 2016 specifically onward in this country, there's been unleashed many regressive energies, I would call it, and many millions supporting those regressive energies, and aggressive a little bit. I think that the old stories and the old structures and the old orders are fraying and coming apart, and that is creating strife and chaos and disharmony and fragmentation. But it's also creating the opportunity for people to be liberated from old forms. And whether it's through the peek through the curtain that UFOs offer, or the advent of AI, people are having new opportunities. And I thought I had something else to say after that, but it's gone. It's the lack of calories in me.
This has been a fairly long Q&A session. I really appreciate the three of you and everyone else for sitting through. This is why we usually do try to keep the sessions to about an hour. It is difficult to maintain this level of concentration a whole lot longer than that. But yes, as you have intuited, Gary, we did in fact ask you here to not just answer questions, but to do a little of a pop quiz as well. So yes, as you know, this is something we've been doing for a little while, just to test your knowledge of pop culture and add a little bit of laughter and levity to what are otherwise some pretty serious metaphysical discussions. So yeah, folks in the Zoom here, you can put your answers in the chat window if you want. Folks watching on YouTube, if there's anybody still watching on YouTube at this point, you can say your answers out loud. Last time, as I recall, no, the three of you did not do so well on our hip hop pop quiz. So today we are indeed going to give you a chance to redeem yourselves. I am sure you're familiar with what our friends in the Confederation have referred to as thought battles between fourth density service to self and service to others entities. But how much do you know about famous rap battles between third density hip hop entities? So I am going to ask you three multiple choice questions about hip hop battles, and let's see how you can do. Are you ready for your first question? Your first question. The quest for supremacy between Jay-Z and Nas gave rise to two of the best battle rap songs in hip hop histories, Jay-Z's Takeover and Nas's Ether. Which of the following is a lyric from Takeover? Is it A, trust me on this one, I'll detach you from mind from spirit, body from soul, I'll have to hold a mask, put your body in a hole? Or is it B, I am the truest, name a rapper that I ain't influenced, gave you all chapters, but now I keep my eyes on the Judas? Or is it C, look at the valedictorian, scared of the future while I hop in the DeLorean? What do you think, A, B, or C?
I'm gonna go with B.
Yeah, B feels B.
That was my guess too, but then if we're wrong, we're all wrong.
So where are you going to go with this one?
B.
Nice. The correct answer is indeed A. Lyric B was from Ether by Nas, and lyric C is Kanye West from Good Morning, music video that does indeed feature DeLorean and a nice tribute to Back to the Future. Let's try a second one, shall we? Actually, I know if I remember correctly, last time, Trish and Austin, you said that you do listen to a little bit of hip hop. Do you have any favorite artists or groups that you listen to?
Well, it's a little harder to listen to him now, but for a long time, Kanye West was my favorite rapper.
Yeah, ditto.
And
Okay.
Outkast is hip hop, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Outkast is awesome. Love Outkast.
Nice.
I like Eminem a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Good. Well, let's see how you do on your second question. In the classic rap battle between Kool Mo D and LL Cool J, the older MC claimed that the younger one stole his style and decided to teach him a lesson. Which of the following lyrics is from LL Cool J? Is it A, what is a panther? An animal that kills. I'm like a shark with blood coming out of the gills. Or B, coming back like the Return of the Jedi, sucker MCs in the place that said I. Or is it, oh my goodness, is it C, rap is an art and I'm like Picasso. But of course, why else would you try so hard to paint a picture and try to get yourself in my shoes, but they won't fit you? What do you think? Which of those lyrics is from LL Cool J?
If I was LL Cool J and wanted to school this younger guy who I would step in was stealing my style, I think I would go with C.
Nice. Trish, Austin?
I'm gonna say B.
Nice.
And I'll
Trish?
take The Price is Right $1 and go with A.
You're betting it all on A, huh?
Yeah.
Good. I am not keeping score here. I will leave it up to folks at home to keep score on this. The correct answer is A. In fact, Kool Mo D was the older MC in this case, and LL Cool J was at the young age of 19, I believe, at this time.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. And if I remember right, LL Cool J was one of a few hip hop artists inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And if I remember correctly, Gary, you said last time at our last Q&A that you were actually born in Cleveland. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep. Born and raised.
Have you ever been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Once when I was young, I would like to go back as an adult. It's supposed to be a pretty cool place.
I'll bet.
And
Yeah.
did LL Cool J indeed steal Kool Mo D's style?
I don't know. I don't listen to either of them in particular. But that was how Mr. Modi apparently perceived it. But yeah, don't know if anybody knows Kool Modi in particular who's not a really great hip hop fan. LL Cool J, in the meantime, has gone on to great fame, many Grammy wins and nominations, as well as an acting career, I believe. So did you see many concerts in Cleveland? Because I believe they put the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland because it was known to be such a great place for rock concerts. Did you see any great concerts growing
I
up in
think
that
there's
area?
some other reason, like the rock and roll, the term was coined in Cleveland as well. Yeah, I forget like a DJ in the 50s first coined it in Cleveland DJ. But no, so I first moved away when I was 22. I moved in with Jim and Carla at 23, but I had moved to Alabama the year before. So yeah, I saw some concerts in my teens and early 20s. Mostly there were arenas outside of Cleveland, like in the suburbs, but I think I saw some shows in Cleveland and stuff.
Oh, interesting. That's great. Never been there, but would love to visit sometime. Are you ready for your last question?
Ready.
In the Albert Einstein versus Stephen Hawking episode of Epic Rap Battles of History, which of the following was one of Einstein's lyrics? In case you weren't familiar with this, Epic Rap Battles of History was a YouTube series in which they would have fictional rap battles between famous people in history. And one of them was Albert Einstein versus Stephen Hawking. So which of the following was one of Einstein's lyrics? Was it A, I'll be stretching out the rhyme like gravity stretches time when you put your little pea brain against this kind of mind? Or was it B, I'm the best, I'm the Snoop Dogg of science, I'll be dropping mad apples on your head from the shoulders of giants? Or was it C, you can't destroy matter for me for you can't destroy matter or me for serious, ripping holes in you bigger than the hole in your black hole theory was? Which one sounds like Einstein?
I'm gonna say A.
I'm feeling. Oh, yeah, you go.
It feels like A or C. So C.
I'm going with B.
Oh, nice.
One of us has to be right.
One of these has to be right. Unless it's all of the above or none of the above. And I never said that was not an option. But in this case, the correct answer is C. The first two were Mr. Hawking's. Though, to be fair, all three of those really could have been from either. I think that was kind of the point of the series. Did have a question for you, black holes, actually. This came up a little while ago in our last Q&A with Jim a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the end of this octave and the nature of the next one. And I know that Ross said in session 41 or something like that, that this octave would end with everything basically being sucked into a black hole and recreating in what I can only assume is some new version of the Big Bang, which it makes me wonder, is the universe in the next octave, is that basically a whole new universe spawned from a new Big Bang that could be completely different from this one? As in, like, no Earth necessarily, no galaxies, star systems as we know it? Or is it more like a continuation of the current universe into a new octave, new space-time, time-space? Do you have any, Gary, do you have any thoughts, interpretations on what Ross said there or what you've heard elsewhere?
Yeah, so there's, in terms of what types of beings, what types of content populates the next octave, that's way beyond the wildest possible imagination, I think. However, I think there is a superstructure to the architecture of reality that persists from octave to octave. You are right. So in my interpretation of the law of one, about there being a new universe, in my studies, I've come to discover that universe and creation and octave are used synonymously to mean essentially the same thing. Though Austin, Jim, and I just recently discovered that universe is also, Ra uses it to mean galaxy in several instances, which will become a footnote in the Ra contact. But so universe, creation, octave, and just as you said, Jonathan, at the conclusion of a given octave, the spiritual mass accumulates and that gravity pulls back into itself, and the logos, as Ra says, systematically reabsorbs everything that was learned, everything that was experienced, every being that there was in that infinite universe collapses into itself and then moves through a period of unimaginable timelessness. And I guess, like, reflects on the party that was this octave and considers what it wants to do for the next round, for the next octave, and builds a whole new reality. But back to the start of my response, I think there is a superstructure to the architecture of reality that that continues through octave after octave. That includes the density curriculum, the division of the octave into 8 or 7, with the 8 being the first of the next one. The densities, that includes the primal 3 distortions. So it would be the logoic being the primal logos, which architects the new universe or the new creation, and then manifests its design through light. But then, like, what does that involve solar systems and galaxies and planets? Is there something even crazier come up with? Are there
So does that mean first density in the next octave would probably be very different from first density in this octave? Or would it just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would have a progression in terms of the first density would be the most fundamental rudimentary form of consciousness in that octave. And Ra describes how the one original thought is a protean entity, is their term, but it learns from each octave and carries over from the previous octave. So, for instance, we have masculine and feminine in this octave as the most efficient means of shared evolution, carried over from the last octave. So who knows what comes next? And who knows, the veil apparently was novel in this octave, and who knows how crazy the logos is going to get with blinding its own constituents through the true nature of reality in the next round. I mean, there will be entities, that much can be said.
For sure. Austin, anything to add?
I agree with Gary about everything, the superstructure idea. One sort of fun thing to think about is that, as Gary was indicating, Ra said that the next octave contains the harvest of this octave contains the harvest of the previous octave. And Gary was indicating the masculine feminine harvest. Ra also talked about that as the mover and the moved. And thinking about that dynamic, I see that, like my interpretation, I see that alive in the most fundamental aspects of our physical universe. And so my theory is that the physical universe itself contained, metaphysical aspects of the previous octave, the harvest of the previous octave. So whatever the next octave is will contain in its fundamental building blocks the harvest of this octave. So I'm assuming then that even if we could call it a physical universe, whatever manifests will look fundamentally different from this, but contain that superstructure that Gary talked about.
Well, we will just have to wait and see until that happens. And hopefully we'll get to do a few more Q&A sessions before that happens. Really wanted to thank the three of you and everyone else for joining us today. This is way longer than our normal session, and I really appreciate the time and gift of service you've given here. Before we wrap things up, Austin, Trish, Gary, any last thoughts, reflections want to share before we say goodbye? Austin, I'll let you go first. You're on my camera right now.
Just because you love me, right? Well, I just really want to say thank you so much, Jonathan, for holding this space and for everybody and for inviting us. As always, it's an honor and a joy. It's always such an amazing time being able to share this space with all of you. And want to reiterate the disclaimer that Gary gave. Like, we're just some, as Carla would say, bozos on the bus. We are in a unique position to be able to share what we think, and don't take it seriously at all. At all. Forget everything.
At least not as much as anything else, for sure. Thank you. Trish, Gary, any last thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, thank you all so much for having us. Thank you, Jonathan, for continuing to facilitate these and these pop quizzes that we fail every time. And
the game is rigged.
It feels like it. Yeah, just thank you. I'm appreciative, and always walk away feeling inspired by people's thought processes and hearing people talk through their questions. It's really inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for the gift of your questions, for taking time out of your lives to share energies with us. It illuminates us very much. I hope we've said something useful for your own consideration. And Jonathan, thank you so much for the space holding and everything, all the sweat that you put into this and the love that you put not only into this, but the Seattle group and everything you do for the Law of One community. And I hope, yeah, before the close of the Octave, we can get a pop quiz that we might kind of make us look smart.
In the spirit of third density, it is designed to be confusing, confounding, and frustrating, and everything else.
Damn it.
Thank you so much for joining us. Gary, Trish, and Austin, thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. Thank you to all our friends at L&L Research for all they've done and continue to do in service to others. Thank you for everyone who's joined us on this Zoom call for your wonderful questions, your loving vibrations, and your support and your teachings as well. Thank you for all you've done in service to others and continue to do. And for anyone who's still watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching all the way through, and thank you for all you've done and continue to do in service to others. Until next time, in the love and light of the One Infinite Creator. Adonai, Namaste.
Love you all.
Love you guys.
Bye.